Laundering Prevention and Prohibition Repeal and Reenactment Bill of 2021, both sponsored by Senators Suleiman Umar of APC Kwara North and Suleiman Kwari, APC Kaduna North. What are your thoughts regarding this, especially as they posited that some public officers who are entrusted with managing public funds for the benefit of larger society are often accused rather of creating phantom companies and acquiring assets. What are your thoughts relating to the way you perceive this to be received by their contemporaries or peers who are wealthier than them and have more influence?
Well, I'd say that it's a good development, that we are making at least efforts, whether it's on paper or in practice, to say that we are trying to curb these things. We would not be able to eradicate it. It will never be 0%. Anyway, corruption is an English word, so if the people who coined the word aren't corrupt, it will never exist anyway. But can we bring it to manageable level? Yes, we can. What do we need to do? We need to set the right laws. I think yesterday or 2 days ago, we were talking about the finance minister talking about the um, open ownership of our oil and gas assets.
Yeah.
I think that this is a pointer to the fact that maybe we might just be making the right rules and laws to help curb these excesses of public officials, the politically exposed ones, the civil servants, and even the rest of us that are neither of these two. So this law is passes through the second reading, and we put it to use, I think that we might just be able to at least put a little bit of caution in how reckless this activities goes on.
Yeah.
We will not be able to catch everybody, but maybe if we catch one, two, and then the law is applied. The bit of it that a bit concerned about is talking about creating another bureau to do the monitoring of those things.
Exactly.
I think we have enough agencies already on ground. We have the police, we have EFCC, we have
Especially the
FIU.
EFCC is already
The EFCC
under their
has
responsibility.
large, almost limitless powers to do almost anything already.
In this regard.
In this regard, yeah. So why would we want to create another bureau to monitor this? Won't we be creating multiple levels of order? So we just need to just get things done. By and large, I think it's a good one. We will just take it. We just hope that they'll take it through and follow through with action.
Thank you so much. Please share your thoughts on WhatsApp 0809 444 0981. We have this next story. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I would really like to hear from our listeners, and maybe not just now, during Lagos Talks as well, what the proposed punishment they would for criminals or for crimes such as corruption, terrorism, especially corruption. Some people would say pay the ultimate price. Some people would say a number of years in jail. It would be good to hear from our listeners what's your proposal for a punishment for a worthy punishment for that crime.
Just wondering if the ones we have already is not enough. Anyway.
No, but I mean, because, okay, so just don't forget, sorry, before you add Lakunle, a few days ago now, that the former pensions chairman for 2 billion.
Maina.
Yeah, he was given 8 years, and he has spent, I mean, counting from when
2 years already.
He has spent 2 years already, so it's like 6 years, a slap on the wrist for stealing 2 billion, and asked to return only 1 billion.
Just like Udre said, I think what they need to do is just to update those, because there are punishments, more than enough punishments in our extant laws as they were.
Exactly, and a lot of these things are also at the discretion of the judge, right? So the judge is the one who eventually dishes the punishments, right? So I don't know if what we need is tougher punishment in quotes. So I really don't know what that is. I think what we need to be better at is better prosecution, of cases, and not just better, quick prosecution of cases, so that people who are tried, can, their cases can be decided quickly enough. And then nothing stops you from also, bringing in 1, 2, 3, 4 counts. It doesn't have to be one. With better investigation and all that, you can have multiple, jail terms, for people who are caught, in corrupt practices, or at least decided cases. So that's, I don't know whether tough. I mean, to be honest, to me, it's just one of those newspaper headline things.
Ian says capital punishment for corrupt officials. I have spoken on behalf of everyone. Thank you.
They're just going to use that against their political opponents. I
That's
tell
it.
you for free.
That's
That's what's
another
going to
thing.
happen.
Yeah.
So
I
let's
mean,
just not even go
the
there.
other
And capital punishment is something they're even trying to eradicate across the world. So I'm not sure.
How that's going to. Thank you. Ugo, let me come to you for this one. The Federal Executive Council at its weekly meeting yesterday approved 348.7 trillion naira investment portfolio under the federal government's 2021 to 2025 National Development Plan. They say this is an extension of the ERGP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan that's existed and supposed to expire by December of this year, next month. What are your thoughts regarding this presentation by the Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning?
I like the way they call this big figures, but let me just flash you back a little bit.
Yep.
Right? So let me read. Nigeria's National Development Plan, 1975 to 80, is the third in the series of national development plans drawn up for Nigeria since the early 1960s. In its biggest and the most ambitious, which the country has launched, it is the biggest and most ambitious. Whilst the first national plan involved a capital expenditure of 2.2 billion and the second 3 billion, the third proposed a capital expenditure of 30 billion. This was a report written in the 80s, Mr. Valentine. So let's not be, dazzled. Typically, the government comes up with all these plans, dust the old ones up, freshen it a little bit, spice a little things in there, and then bring it up. So from 30 billion between 1975 and 80, that was like the 5-year plan then. And by the way, it was meant to give us a GDP growth rate of about 9% per annum back then, right? So it was between 1975 and 1980. Now we've now gone to 387 trillion. Almost, our entire GDP, right? Not even twice our GDP actually, twice our GDP, and thanks for that for those multiples. So you see, it's not really about planning or writing things. We've seen documents upon documents. Have you forgotten needs that was under Obasanjo? Yaradua came with his own. Jonathan came with his own. Can't remember what it's called. Buhari came with ERGP as it was panned, and then. How come it's now 2 years? I mean, from next year, Buhari is lame duck, whether you like it or not, because there's really nothing much the administration can do again in terms of economic policies. So you coming up and giving us a 5-year policy is assuming that the next government will continue with this policy, right? So to me, it really is it's too late in the game, bit of a waste of time. I do like the thinking behind it, meaning that, there's a lot the private sector is going to do here this time around. Government is it's basically everyone coming together with the growth plan. Now, there are also some things in here that some people have always talked about, which is look, in trying to improve the infrastructure deficit in Nigeria, you've got to allow the private sector play a huge role. So concession a lot of things to them. For example, why should the government be the ones managing rails? Why don't you just concession that out to the private sector and create a solid vehicle and solid, legal framework that can allow them also make money from it? Why don't you concession all the airports and let the private sector do that? Why don't you concession roads and so all those huge infrastructure deficits that we have with a solid legal framework and policy framework, the private sector can basically do that. I think that's what this document is speaking to. But my concern is that it's not the first time we've seen things like this, and that's why I have to flash you back. So this sort of thinking has been there since the 70s, bro. When you were around the period you and I were born, you know what I mean? So it's nothing new.
Calculating my age again.
On my Instagram yesterday, my son said olden days was 20 years ago, and that was 2001. So I mean, and I looked at myself, I was like, oh my god, man. 2001. I mean, like it was just like yesterday. I said it was olden days. Anyway, so this was olden days, in the days of like archival. So nothing new. I don't know. I think, like I said, in a nutshell, thinking is good, but it's nothing new here, and it's too late in the game, Buhari. Too late in the game. And each time I see things like this, you know what really actually pisses me off? I always see Osinbajo's name there. Like, Baba, what have you been like? Why is your name always in the nice things, but in the implementation of it,
we don't see?
That's a very good question.
I'm telling you,
because Does it mean that he has good intentions, but perhaps he's not given the freedom to express?
I don't
Because
know.
it seems to, up until the point of implementation, like you mentioned, he's there, but then he just goes poof off in the air. We don't hear
Yeah.
anything about it again.
I remember they also have the national, is it the National Executive Council?
Yeah,
there have
Several
been
of
so
them like
many
that.
economic
Plenty.
councils.
The private sector's part of this stuff is going to be led by, guess who? Atedo Peter. So,
Oh, you don't.
who
You-
often
you know,
criticizes the
so
government as well. So,
exactly,
you know,
it's
like
almost
fella
like
said.
whitewashing. You know, you're putting these things at this time. What if what happened in 2015? If you had implemented this in 2015, you announced this. Oh yeah, nice. Okay, that's your plan.
Exactly.
To have enough plan to follow through to watch you execute
It's
what
on
you
the
said.
premise of government is the continuum.
Yes.
Not when I started.
I said the next person will cancel it and come up with his
Give it
own.
a new name.
Is it to give it name?
No, but what if it's maybe they're optimistic that another APC
We've been
government.
optimistic since 1970s. What would you
That's
say?
what I'm telling you.
It's on the premise
That time it was
government
30 billion. Now it's 300 and something trillion. Could you ever imagine that?
I rest my case. All right, Emeka from Ikeja says our laws are outdated. May now got 64 years, but they'll all run concurrently. We need to update them. That's a good point, right? So Danny, I had to bring that up because then Danny goes on to say we have Money Laundering Prohibition Act 2013, we have Terrorism Prohibition Act 2011, we have EFCC Act, we have ICPC Act. All of these acts speak to money laundering and terrorism financing. We have LEAs like the police, EFCC, ICPC, DSS, NDLEA, NFIU, customs, etc. All of them enforce this. Typically, all of these guys request for the same document when there's a high-profile investigation. So why create another bureau for goodness sake?
I have an answer to that. It's because the acts have not been acting.
Mm-hmm.
So there's another story that we need to get into, Mr. Lakunle. Guardian has this report on 5G, saying the 5th-generation technology. It says Nigeria's 5G reserve price of $197.4 million, among world's costliest. Federal government being optimistic for December 13 for the implementation of the 5th-generation network spectrum auction in Nigeria. The reserve price the bid has been placed at $194.7 million. That's about 75 billion naira. It's been ranked as one of the most expensive. But then they said so it's even cheaper than a few countries, India being one of them, and South Africa. But what do you think about this in terms of the entry plan by some private establishments? Do you think it's going to be realistic, as from a business point of view?
It's not unrealistic actually. When you look at the number that we project in terms of our population, right? We say that we are 200 million. That's our estimated number. When you look at that, and then you look at the rest of the world, how many countries have 200 million people? Where can I sell to 200 million people? So I think that largely that's the basis, although the executive vice chairman of NCC says they use the global best practices to arrive at that price. For me, I think that Nigeria needs money, and this is an opportunity to make money, and so it just comes and says that, okay, so I'm putting my reserve price at this amount. If you're interested, pay me 10% up front before you come in. Now, the issue is, it's not even much more paying that $194.7 million. That's my concern. So after paying that 194 over the period, whatever you're going to pay it, maybe 10% and pay the 90% once you win it, whenever you pay it, what of the cost of putting the infrastructure on ground itself?
Exactly.
Is our environment business friendly enough to make anybody want to make that kind of upfront investment? Sometimes when, like Ugo said earlier in the earlier story, it's not that we don't have smart people in government. We do. They can think of anything. They can think of smart things. And when you read them on paper, it looks beautiful. But the practicality of these things are the issues that we deal with. Look at, a government woke up in this country one day and killed a whole industry by just one law. I'm outlawing the use of motorcycles on the roads, and vim, a whole industry went under. So that is the kind of environment where we're. So there are so many obstacles that we can almost project that will make this thing unattractive to anybody to want to come here. That's aside. So, in my opinion, I think that the government should actually look at that end of the spectrum and then come down to say, okay, so for me to compensate these people who want to come and do this business here, let me reduce their cost of entry so that when they meet this cost in front, they would think that it is money well spent. Aside from that, so let's assume they even pay. In my head, as a business person, I'm thinking, okay, so I've given $200 million for this thing. How soon am I going to make my 200 million? Remember when MTN came that time, and they told us that per second billing was not possible until 7 years after they started business. It was because they were not so certain that they will be here for the long haul. They wanted to make their money as quickly as possible. And so once this happens, if they sell this thing at this price, we can be sure that the cost of data, the cost of access to the internet will probably go
5G
higher.
network, precisely.
Exactly, because it's 5G, because that's what's bringing it.
But going on that, laying on that thought that I just shared now, thank you so much for the background you've laid. I mean, the auction price at that amount, usually it's based on certain metrics. For instance, somebody would say maybe the population of Nigeria, entry level, based on the number of subscribers that they already have, that could, be willing to migrate to 5G. What other metrics do you think would be reasonable to defend these sums?
Funny enough, I don't mind. I think the auction price is reasonable, if you ask me, because sometimes the way they cast these headlines is just funny. You're trying to compare the auction price with other countries and all that. Besides, right there in the article, you're saying that in the US, India, auction prices like this are in billions of dollars, right? So in Nigeria is $1 million. Now let's also understand that this is 5G, and we're getting into a world where video streaming, avatars and metaverse is going to be the big thing, and what's going to drive it is 5G, right? Fast, high speed internet where streaming and video and things like that is going to be very, very useful. So it's a lot of money, and I think that even if you see the way a lot of all these telcos, if you look at their numbers and see their multiples and the growth rate, is actually in data. So I personally I think that I don't think it's as expensive as they make. I mean, don't get me wrong, I don't know the metrics of it to your question, but when you compare it to other countries and you see that Nigeria with its population, and not just its population, its youth population, one of the largest in the world, I mean, that's just huge money and huge investment for a huge business opportunity for telcos. So I think it's just a no-brainer.
I think for the sake of the business people, going to your thoughts that you both shared, thank you, that government should also consider, laying some laws down to protect them within the period of time that it would make sense to recoup such investment.
I mean, the fare really is not much about paying the money itself. Like I said, it's about what after.
Okay.
That's
Ugodre, thank you, Lakunle. Ugodre, there's a report here from Premium Times. Let's quickly touch on it. The legal team of the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, Nnamdi Kanu, Wednesday walked out on Binta Nyako, the judge of the Abuja division of the Federal High Court, handling the separatist trial. They said the members of the team they were seated earlier, but they were really not impressed with the way the judge handled, especially as he refused and somebody being admitted, or a group of people being admitted in a defense. What are your thoughts, please?
I mean, I read the story of multiple sites as well, and I mean, this case is beginning to look like a circus, right? And I think the way both parties are handling it, that's Nnamdi Kanu's side and the government side, I don't think they understand how serious this is to a lot of Nigerians. Okay, people want to see justice served, whether or when I say justice served, I'm not saying that maybe Nnamdi Kanu did wrong or did right. Just people want to see fair trial, right? And taking it very seriously, because how this is tried would also determine how a lot of other people who might actually come after him, would also face consequences. So when you hear things like, so to the story, his lawyers were seated, and lawyers of the government were seated, and then one of Nnamdi Kanu's lawyers from the US, I think a certain Mr. Fain, wasn't allowed entry into the court, and because he wasn't allowed entry into the court, Nnamdi Kanu's people now thought that their belief is that this is just the court siding with the government side, and then they decided to stage a walkout, right? And then they staged a walkout, and then of course granted press interview saying that Nyako, that's the judge, was on the side of the government, and so there's just no point. And that saying a lot of stuff, and then based on that, the judge basically pushed the trial to adjourned it to January next year. So that means there's not going to be everything is just sort of wasted. And the particular trial, that particular court proceeding was meant to address some issues that Nnamdi Kanu's team had put forward, some petitions that they had put forward. So, and when you look through and even hear the judge, according to the judge was saying, look, if you want to be in my court, you gotta apply to me. If there's somebody else who is not on your direct team and you want them to be on my court, then you have to apply their processes for whether that process is correct or not is what I haven't really checked out. I really don't know, but that's what the judge is saying, and that they did not go through that process. And based on that, the judge sort of fenced all of it. Now, if you also look at it from the other side, due to the sensitivity of the case, I think that the judge, based on discretion and the way this is sensitive and all that, I mean, could have allowed those guys come in as well. Were they harmful? I don't think so. Do you understand? So, denying the U.S. lawyer and even somebody as high as the British High Commission was even allowed entry eventually, because that one applied actually, but through the chief judge. Applied through the chief judge, but the others did not apply. But I mean, the judge also has a discretion to say, okay, this is sensitive of the matter and all that, and the way this is going, let me allow you guys to come in. So, but you know what? I really don't know how this thing played out, because a lot of times it all depends on how it plays out in the court, and that's why. So to me, I just think that these guys, whether it's the judge himself or the government side or the Nnamdi Kanu side, I think they've just got to have a little bit of maturity, and let's have a fair trial.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Jerry Tom on YouTube says the Senate should just stop mocking us. We're tired of this stir and corruption fight. Jeez, that's what he said. And then Joyce of the opinion, Okaha, 30-year sentence will stop the madness of looting. Okay, let's go on to our next story. Lakunle, Nigeria's debt stock hits 42.7 trillion naira as Senate okays fresh $16 billion loans. The headline speaks to a lot of what the story is about in the Punch newspaper. And I know we've talked about loans a number of times on this show, and its impact on the economy. If it's good for the economy, should we still be approving loans for this government? What do you think?
Well, earlier on, I know that I think last year, 2 years ago, there was this MTEC, that the medium-term expenditure framework.
Yeah.
And I think in that document, all the plans of the government for till 2024 in terms of loans have been laid out. So I can't particularly point to exact point where this amount is in that document right now, but I want to assume that this is part of the loans that the government has specified in that document that we will be taking. And in this report, excuse me, they've done a breakdown of where the monies are going to come from: the World Bank, the China Exim Bank, Commercial Bank of China, China Development Bank. It seems like we're very popular with China these days, and Africa Development Bank. Okay, so, and they also tried to, at least they gave a hint in this report as to what sectors some of these monies will go to.
Yes.
Right. So, my concern is not much.
Sorry, just highlight some of the sectors.
I see there's
health.
$450 million to support
fight against
malaria.
So I hope that $20 million or $2 million is not included for mosquito nets. Is not included in this. Because I know they kicked against.
I know we talked about a few weeks ago about mosquito nets and stuff. I'm not second guessing that it is part of this or it's not, but let's speak to this story as it is. Okay, so they've tried to put some of these things there. Some of them, the usual cliche. For projects like roads, for railways, it is
infrastructure.
And we keep saying, why do those government have to be the one? Okay, you have brought the money to do it. How can we make it profitable so that we can use the proceeds from these things to pay back? Why don't you concede derailers, for example, to private to manage so that it can be profitable. Why don't you concede some of these routes to private people so that we can toll them and they can be profitable and some of these can pay for these loans? So my concern really in itself is how do we plan to pay back these things?
Have they ruled out completely these projects themselves paying back, as I think it was Senator Bolade, the chief executive officer, part of the experts who had responded, had suggested?
Well, that's a question that we need to ask the Senate and the government itself.
All right.
What is our plans to pay back these loans?
Right.
I mean, it's enough. It's enough to get this money. We desire a good real system.
Yeah.
Yes, we desire everything good. But okay, we don't have money. We have borrowed. We are going to pay back. How? When?
Thank you. All right, let's move on to our next story, Ugo. Vanguard says 2022 budget, INEC to spend, INEC alone, when I saw the figures, I thought it was the entire country, but INEC to spend 1.3 billion naira on funerals, Christmas bonus, others, and 200 million naira to audit accounts. Vanguard.
I like the way these newspapers sort of set up their headlines. So 1.3 billion. Please, can they just sort of break these things down and not try to be sensational? So it's 1.3 billion for funerals, Christmas bonus, and severance allowances. And we do know, without even seeing the breakdown, you should know that when you see severance allowances there, that's probably going to be the bulk of this kind of money. So, but when you put it up with funerals, you're basically just trying to get people's attention, and they have gotten our attention.
They have.
To be honest, down the line as well, you see an amount for crash and things like that. Look, I don't think that it will be fair to start to pass judgment on people's salaries and welfare and things like that, because I'm sure whatever organization you find yourself in, you also wouldn't want someone to just pass the judgment. Now, what is more important though is this an organization that is necessary for Nigeria, and should the people working there be very well remunerated? I think so. I mean, there are a lot of other organizations or MDAs that shouldn't actually exist, and I think those are the ones that I'll be bothered about. But for an INEC, an organization that conducts election, and I think over the years they've sort of metamorphosed and they've changed and tried to be better. I think working there is not easy. You also have people that are easily induced, right? They can easily be induced to basically sway elections. You just got to give them the right remuneration. So that's why I don't want to just I'm trying to avoid.
While I do understand what you're saying, Ugo, one thing I also have to remember is that if these figures tallied with the livelihoods, as you see, of INEC officials, you would say, okay, yeah, INEC is a good place to work. So I can understand that they get a lot of funding from the government to run. But it doesn't, and unfortunately, not just with INEC, but in a number of ministries, departments, agencies, they put up this amount of money, but it doesn't seem to cascade down to the people. And that's where people start to question the amount of money that they bring forward as, proposed budgets. So it's not the amount, like you said, it's just that it doesn't seem to show.
That's a different thing. That's where ICPC comes in, Abi.
Just a quick one too. For the funeral bit of it, we can begin to justify why they have to put that in their budget, because elections happen. INEC is not in control of violence that may happen, and when it happens, unfortunately, people die, and then INEC takes the responsibility for burial expenses
without trying to make.
So I'm not trying to make an excuse for them. But we know that that's the reality. No, that's the reality. That is what happens in our environment. You see how we are jubilating that there was no violence in Anambra just 2 days ago.
There was three. I mean, can I just say that I think I'd rather they put that money to security and ensure that they don't even die in the first place. They, not give it to funeral costs.
But the reason why we are seeing all this is because we are pushing for transparency. So they will tell you, we are being transparent now. We're giving you the details. So.
Right, Lakunle, I just want you to touch, just to give me your thoughts on this one, because we're out of time. Drug war, option of fine, should it be removed from NDLEA Act, according to the new chief in charge, Brigadier General Muhammad Buba Mara?
Yes, I think it should be. I think that, but then removing it is not even the solution. I think the solution is at the beginning, stop people from doing drugs.
And why are they even going into it?
Okay, thank you very much. I will go into these stories even into more detail during Lagos Talks 981, and always good to hear your take on it. We'll open the phone lines then, and of course take comments that we couldn't when, during this segment of the show. A big thanks to our analysts. Thank you, Ugodre. Thank you, Lakunle Yusuf. You can find Ugodre at Ugodre on social media and Lakunle at Lakunle70 on social media. I'll go Valentine.
Yes, and I am Mairo-Ese.
We'll go on a break now.
We'll be back in 9 minutes for Lagos Talks 981.
The headlines.
Thank you very much.